we most likely live in a simulation. To start, categorize all concepts as either something that can be copied, or something that cannot be. If it cannot be copied and you have an instance of it, then that must be the only instance of it. Let's say something can be copied and furthermore, assume copies cannot disappear. Given enough time, the number of copies will only increase. This has to do with the universe and cyclical time, and how, if time is cyclical in a deterministic universe, there are a finite number of copies. Additionally, copies do not have to be perfect. They can be off slightly or very close to perfect. Accuracy does not need to be accounted for, so long as variance is not extensive. Originally, there was something that had identity, and making a copy of it didn't affect its integrity. It follows that as more and more copies are made, it becomes harder to know the original from its daughters. This is easier to grasp if we consider that copying is a function. Let's say we have two copies A and B. Imagine that to copy would be a function, and uncopy would be its inverse. If a copy makes B, then B uncopy makes A. If we take B copy, note this is not the inverse, could make A, but it is unlikely. More likely, it will make a new copy, C, where C could equal A if the function doesn't mutate. We denote this as a reverse byproduct. It would be impossible to know the original if you couldn't apply the inverse of one with certainty to revert to the source. Moving on. To clarify, copies of copies can also be made. As time passes, more copies are produced, and if picking a copy at random, it is very unlikely that it would be the original, especially with more and more copies being made. Even if it were the original, it would be impossible to tell, because so many copies have been made that distinguishing it from its daughter neighbors would be impractical. A copy A will always have 100% accuracy compared to itself, and it can have variable accuracy with respect to another copy, decreasing more and more as the copies become less direct. However, the purpose of copies is to try and be as accurate as possible. Now suppose we have one original universe A. A universe could be a space with a given set of rules. Time could be cyclical, or it could be linear. If time is cyclical, and the universe is deterministic, that means that in each period where time resets, the same events occur. We want the contents of universe A to create a copy of A. This must happen before time resets, otherwise it will never happen, because when time resets, events will follow the same sequence. This means that there is limited time for a copy of A to be made before it is proven that A cannot be copied. If A cannot be copied, then it is unique and therefore we can determine the original, because there is only one. The moment one copy of A is made, A is proven to be reproducible, and that means that the number of copies will increase with each iteration of time, even if the original only produced one copy. To be clear, this means that if A makes a copy of itself with an acceptable accuracy, then that copy B will follow a similar course of events, eventually creating a copy of itself as well, creating a self-reproducing operation. The number of copies will quickly increase. How would a universe create a copy of itself? It is conceivable that in the span of time of our universe, our human species will make a simulation that would be accurate enough to simulate ourselves, or something like us. It is also worth noting that it is only a variable of accuracy and intent. The tendency to make simulations would be inherited, creating a cycle. The tendency to make simulations would be inherited, creating a cycle. We could end up accurately simulating our universe enough that even in our simulation, other intelligence develops throughout the universe that is based on events in the universe we simulated. If the previous assumptions don't seem like too much to you, and they may well seem like too much, which is a different discussion, as I really don't think it is much of a problem to assume these things even though they are broad assumptions, you can see how it is very likely that we live in one of these copies of the original universe. The copy could have been made by humans in a previous iteration, or by another species in a previous iteration. The accuracy need not be very high. in which case the intelligence that created the simulation created a new reality that has become valid. The accuracy could even be intentionally lessened, as in the case of making a piece of entertainment or an experiment to measure results. Still within that simulation everything appears to be within the laws of the known physics. Okay, what if time is linear? Well, then there is no time limit to see if the universe is copyable. In its stead, there is infinite time, so as to become even more likely. Until the heat death of the universe, what if time is something else? What if the universe is more complicated than that? What if it isn't deterministic? Even if the copies are less sophisticated than the item they are copying, as long as they can result in a copy of itself, the cycle will continue and more copies will be made. The only requirements to keep more copies going, should they start at all, is that the accuracy stay above a level where copies of itself continue to be made, and that it should stay above a level where there is consciousness within each simulation. Think of a hall of mirrors reflecting onto one another. I hope it makes sense from the aforementioned why it appears that, should we make a simulation of our universe that on any level shows conscious beings, and makes copies of itself, then we are definitely living in some sort of simulation. Given how much time we seem to have left as a human race, and given our desire to make accurate simulations, those requirements will be fulfilled.